Welcome to Concussion Talk Podcast. My name is Nick Mercer. I write Concussion Talk. www.concussiontalk.com. This is episode 21, and today I'll be talking to Enrico Quilico. Enrico was severely brain injured in 2006 and has since gone on to compete in 17 triathlons, including an Ironman Triathlon at Lake Placid this past summer, for which he raised over $10,000 for Brain Injury Canada. I will talk to Enrico about brain injury, exercise, and triathlon. Okay, I'm talking to Enrico now, and I will get him to introduce himself and talk about what he's doing. So, Enrico?
Hi, thanks a lot, Nick. My name is Enrico Quilico, and I live in Montreal at the moment. I'm currently between contracts, but I'm teaching. I'm doing some work in a couple of different schools, and I'm also a personal trainer. I work at the downtown YMCA, and it's a big YMCA in downtown Montreal, where I supervise and I work with private clients.
Oh, and you got a very interesting initiative working on there now. I'll ask you at the end of this initiative working on now.
That would be great.
But for now, I'll ask you about your brain injured in 2006.
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened?
Absolutely. So I went out for a ride on my father's motorcycle on the highway in Montreal. It was a Highway 20. I head out further west and from where he lives, and then I was on my way back on the highway, and there was a car that was literally waiting to cross the highway. And that car, that individual thought he had enough time to cross before I arrived. And it was a bad decision, bad call on his part. And unfortunately, he came up in front of me, and I did not have time to brake quickly enough or to stop the vehicle because I was going at about 100 kilometers an hour. And as a result, I had to brake quickly. I lost control of the motorcycle. I tipped over. And I broke a number of bones on the left side of my body, my ribs, my pelvis, my elbow. I shattered my elbow. I took the impact on the left side, and then I proceeded to skid along the highway for about 60 feet, and I stopped headfirst hitting his car.
Wow! So you rushed to hospital then. So
I was very fortunate. There were some people behind me on the highway in a car. They were the first ones on the scene, and they called an ambulance, and they made sure that I was taken to the Montreal General, where they have a Trauma One center, where I was really treated as quickly as possible, and very fortunate for those circumstances because it really was a matter of time. I was unconscious immediately after the accident, and I remained unconscious I was in a coma for a couple of weeks after the injury. I had a severe traumatic brain injury. That was ultimately the worst problem. And then at the hospital, I was in the intensive care for about a month's time, I think 5 weeks, 2 weeks of which I was in a coma. And the usual, very common, series of events after that kind of injury.
Yeah. And then you went to rehab right just after your ICU, a few months after.
Yeah, well, no, the ICU process was for about 5 weeks, like I said, 2 of which I was in a coma, and then afterwards I was transferred to the 14th floor of the hospital, and I spent about another month in there. And so I was at the Montreal General for 2 full months, and then I was transferred to inpatient rehab, where I spent another 2-3 months, and that transitioned to outpatient rehab, and then I continued on with outpatient rehab for about 2 years after the accident.
Wow! So what did you have to learn in rehab? What were what were you lacking when you woke up, when you got out of woke from your coma? What did rehab have to teach you again?
Well, when I woke from the coma, I wasn't conscious. I don't start remembering things until about several weeks, almost a month after waking from the coma, because I was in such an impaired state. I was not communicating. I tell people like who ask about it that I basically had to relearn everything from scratch. But things went much quicker, obviously. But yeah, it was really like the building blocks, starting from the beginning again. And I had a number of therapists who would help me just learn how to, use my brain again to think properly, to speak well, to and pronunciate my words, to do the smallest of tasks, to get up in the morning, to make my bed, to take a shower, to clean myself, to walk again, my balance. I had a lot of, we had to work a lot on balance. My
Yeah.
memory, there was, a therapist for every single one of the functions, the whole team. I was really fortunate, and the medical system in Quebec is also of a very good, high quality, and I was fortunate to have that kind of care immediately after the injury because it it made a big difference. It certainly did. And
Yeah,
so
definitely.
therapists for every single function, you can think of.
So you were in rehab all told for about 2 years, just said? Inpatient and outpatient for about 2 years?
Yeah, the outpatient continued on for about 2 years after the accident, and that was mostly with a speech pathologist and psychologist, and that those were to accompany my return to everyday life. I returned to school after my accident, and that was a big area of focus, and that helped a lot with with my cognitive rehab was going back to school, and that's where I did the most work in rehab with the professionals there was learning strategies to compensate for a lot of difficulties I had with memory, with concentration, attention, whatnot, and applying those strategies in a real context. So I was going to rehab a couple of times a week, perhaps, or it started to go. I would start to go less and less, and in my everyday life, I was living again on my own in an apartment, going to school, working part time, and dealing with the demands of everyday life.
So how this is kind of off script here, but how old are you when you were brain injured, and like what level of schooling did you have you done since your accident?
Oh, thanks for asking. Listen, I was 23 years old when I had the injury, and I was basically a student at university, but just kind of like I had just started, and I was very much lost. I didn't really know which direction I was going in.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was working mostly at the time at 23, and I had the injury at 23, and then I went back to school, um, I guess a year after the accident. And so I did not have any degrees of any sort before the injury, but after the injury, I went back to school and I did a 4-year Bachelor of Education with a specialization in teaching English as a second language. So I became a certified teacher in Quebec. I got a teaching license, a brevet d'enseignement, and I did a number of internships working in schools, teaching English as a second language, and then I went on to do my master's degree at McGill, and that was more research related. So my first degree, my Bachelor of Education, was at Concordia, which is a great
Yep.
university in Montreal, and the second degree was a master's at McGill University, and that was more research related. And there I was in a department of kinesiology and physical education, and my
Okay.
research was really interesting and unique. It was related to exercise and brain injury, so I was able to do some work here in the community in Montreal because of the connections I had and the places I had been after my accident, my experience, and I was able to incorporate that in my own research, and that was really it was a really meaningful aspect of that chapter in my life. So yeah, I 2 degrees after the injury. First was the B.Ed and then the M.A. And they were both after the brain injury.
Wow. So seeing that you're a personal trainer and you've done kinesiology, I've kind of and you're doing Ironman now, you must have played sports before your brain injury. So so
Actually,
what
I didn't.
you didn't?
I was very inactive. I
I
mean, when at the time of my brain injury, I was very inactive. I did not do any regular sports, and I was not very fit, to be honest with you. It just, it was something I got a lot more involved with after the injury, and
okay.
that's why it was so perhaps so. such a well, it was. I would have to say that the single most positive and influential aspect of my recovery was my extensive involvement in sports and exercise, and that I say that with confidence because I did not exercise before the injury,
Yeah.
and I started afterwards. So it had a major role in my recovery, and long term in all domains of my life.
Yeah.
It really it went a long way.
Because I honestly just assumed you did play sports and or ran just exercise before, but because I was going to ask
No.
you how soon you started back at exercise after your brain injury, but how soon did you start exercising during was it in your like physiotherapy, or was it just you just decided one day that exercise would be best, or physio you take from your physio, or your degrees, or
Yeah,
what?
it started in physio, and I remember it was at the inpatient rehab center after the hospital. In after my stay in the hospital, I was in the inpatient rehab center, and I remember being very inspired because I had access to a gym.
Yeah.
I had access to a gym where I did my physio several times a week, which focused mostly on balance and cardio and coordination, these sort of things. But I had access to the gym outside of those hours, and so it was accessible to me. And I remember there were these photos of athletes with disabilities all over the walls, and it was very inspirational for me. And it was definitely a turning point where I decided that I wanted to I wanted the accident to be a major turning point in my life for the better, and to some degree, exercise was the vehicle for me to make all those changes. And so it started then. It was just about gaining the weight back that I had lost. You know, I had lost about 70 pounds as a result of lying in a hospital bed for
Yeah.
2 months. And then, so it was about putting the weight back on, so building that back up. And then after the, physio in the rehab center, later on I went to the outpatient rehab and I did the physio there as well. And then there came a point when, I started going to a gym on my own. And I remember the physio came with me from my outpatient center to just make sure that
Yeah.
I was on the right track, that I had a good program, and that I was doing things carefully. And yeah, it was actually at the downtown YMCA, the place where I work now, and have been working for some time. I went and I started training myself, and with help from people there. It's also the center where I did my certifications to become a personal trainer and whatnot, and where I started working 2 years after my accident in
Wow.
part time. Yeah, I started working there, personal training, and it's something that I've always kept on the side. So it's something that helped me throughout my studies, helped me pay for a number of things. It was a perfect part time job that always helped a lot along the way. So yeah, interesting that like for me that transition was very positive. So going
Yeah.
from the physio it was physio at the hospital, then physio and inpatient rehab, which became like a big part of my rehab, and then physio and the outpatient rehab, which kind of transitioned to the fitness work I was doing in a community center, and then from there it took off and it went in different directions. And I remember being at that gym and being inspired to do my first triathlon, and
Yeah.
that was in 2008. So that was
Yeah.
that
Wow.
was a long time ago. It was 8 years ago, and then training for it at that facility and starting
Yeah.
to swim there, start to run there, and like a lot of the things happened alongside that community center for me.
So you started triathlon, but you started exercise at all at a gym, like, and you just mentioned that YMCA did have a pool. So when did you start triathlon training, or when did you decide that, yeah, I'll do triathlon. I'm not just gonna swim, I'm not just gonna run, I'm not just gonna bike and do all three. When did you decide that was the best move for you?
It was 2 years after the accident, and I was at the gym, and I was just doing a regular workout in the gym, and I was running
Sorry,
on the
how many years
treadmill.
after? 2 years?
Yeah, it was in 2008, and
Okay.
or maybe it was a little before, because the race. it was around that time, and I was
Yeah.
training on the and I was running on the treadmill, and I it came to me that I wanted to do something really big to kind of say, hey, I'm back, make a big comeback from the accident, and I wanted to do something, very physically challenging, and I decided that I wanted to do a triathlon, and I got it stuck in my head that I was going to do a triathlon in 2008. So that became my major goal that I started working towards for that summer, and yeah, it was very successful. I had a great time doing it, and I was really fortunate. There were some people here in Montreal who picked up on the story, and they did a little cover story on me 8 years ago in the Montreal Gazette, and
Yeah.
a number of, or on CTV, yeah, so a number of different media sources here in Montreal just did little stories on me, and it was really special experience for me because it was, like I said, it was like my way of saying of coming back after the accident, saying, I made it 2 years later. I'm back, and look, I'm doing a triathlon, and that was just a mini triathlon.
Yeah.
That
So
was the first
how
one.
many have you done now?
Well, I've completed 17 in 8 years.
17. You've completed
Mhm.
17,
Yeah.
and one Ironman probably two in a minute. But what's your favorite event of the three? Swim, bike, run. What's your
Yeah.
favorite, and what's your best? And where do you like to just get better? What do you think is you like to improve on? You think you can improve on most?
My favorite, it's hard to say my favorite. I really
Oh
love
yeah,
all three. I
really?
love them equally. They are truly, I'm truly a triathlete at heart because
Yeah.
I love the three sports. The one I'm best at is definitely swimming.
Okay.
Um, Swimming is my strongest. I started swimming when I was young, and so I had a good background with
Yeah.
that. It served me later on. Um, and I usually swim year round and compete for Master Swimming Canada, and it's something
Okay.
that's also a big part of my life. Um, and after the injury, it became a bigger part of my life. The one that could improve on the most, bike and run equally on that one. I don't have the physique of like a record breaking runner. I'm not a very
Yeah. No,
slender
I
guy.
hear that. I hear that. I used
I'm
to
more
run.
muscular, and so like with the running, yeah, I suppose but I'm a very fast runner, and I'm a great cyclist too. I just if there were one to improve, I don't know, probably my cycling, I would say,
Yeah, I did. I did
between the
triathlon.
two.
I did triathlon before my brain injury, and
Okay.
I was a swimmer, so swimming was good. But I hated running. Did not like running at all. I love cycling, but running was not my forte, and I didn't like it.
Hmm.
But not because I'm big muscular, just I'm just tall and not very good at running at all.
Fair
Um,
enough.
but yeah, so I want to talk to you. I saw you in Toronto for the Brain Injury Canada conference in September, and you
Yes.
spoke about you raced in July at the Ironman Lake Placid. So, and you raised money for Brain Injury Canada on the way to that. So, could you tell us about that? So, the race and how you raise money and your idea to raise money for Brain Injury Canada.
Absolutely. So, the same way that I wanted to make a big comeback in 2008, 2 years after the injury, I wanted to celebrate the 10th anniversary, 10 years after I had the injury. So it was in 2006, and then 10 years later, 2016. This year, I wanted to celebrate by doing a really big event. And I think for any triathlete who's passionate about the sport, the Ironman's always on the bucket list. So, for some time, I had been thinking about the Lake Placid Ironman. Until recently, until before they started the Mont Tremblant Ironman came into to play. Like the Lake Placid Ironman was the one
Closest.
in closest to me, was the
Yeah.
qualifier for Hawaii, and yeah, it was just always interesting. I've heard great things about it. The Adirondack Mountains. It's a really beautiful race. It's also one of the most challenging Ironmans out there. So I decided that this was going to be the year to do the big one, and I also decided that I wanted to promote, to raise money for some brain injury related cause. And Brain Injury Canada fit well. I had done some work with Brain Injury Canada before. In 2014, I was a keynote speaker for their conference in Gatineau. And then in 2015, I was an organizing committee member. And I really appreciate the work that the people do at that organization. And I'm very, very happy to support it. And so raising the money for them was a no-brainer, excuse the pun. And it started taking off, and we started raising money, and it was basically through personal donations, through GoFundMe, and we raised over $10,000 for the association, nice. Which was really, really phenomenal. And I definitely felt like I was most happy about that. It was very motivating for me. I had a lot of support from so many people, and I was happy that I was able to do something that gave back to the community at the same time.
So how would you say how did the race go?
The race was unlike any race I've ever done before. Like I had mentioned, I up until that race, I had done 16, so 17 total with the Ironman. I've done a couple of half Ironmans. They're challenging races, but they're like 5-hour races. Around 5:30. But the Ironman, it's like a 12-hour race, and so unlike anything I had ever done before. And I trained for it I was getting coached for it for 6 months before the race, and at the peak I was putting in about like 20 hours a week of training. It was just insane. And I don't know, it's hard, like it's hard to ever prepare for something like that because you've never done it before the first time. And so it was a very unique experience. I had no idea what to expect, and a lot of what they say is really true about that race. It comes to get you on a whole other level because your body just starts shutting down. I mean, I was really well trained for that race, and for 6 months I was training for it. And by 10 and a half hours into the race, things started to get really challenging.
I had a bit of
pardon?
I said I would think so.
Yeah. And I mean, I finished my race in 12 hours, 18 minutes. I think that by 11 hours, my body was just shutting down and saying like, oh, that's it. Don't want to do this anymore.
Does it start playing tricks to your mind, or?
Yeah, for sure.
Really emotional? Is it like?
There was no question, like in my mind, I knew that I was going to complete it, and there was nothing that was going to stop me on that day from doing the race, So that was for sure. But what I had to put my body through to get to that point, to get to that finish line, was just awful. It's so masochistic.
Because fun though.
Like my body just started shutting down, especially the last couple kilometers on the run. Like my running speed, like it decreased significantly. It was just, it gets to a point where you have nothing left. So it's just your will, just your will that's pushing you to finish, because your body is completely given up. It's all you have left is your will just to cross that finish line.
Wow. Yeah. So with that being said, would you like to not do another one?
I promised myself that I would not do another one before 2018 because I could never justify doing that much damage to my body and not giving myself at least a couple years to recover, But I don't know. If I would do it in 2018. I probably do another one before my days are done. But it's a fun race, and it would be interesting to see how I do on a second Ironman. But not this year, that's for sure. Not this year.
No, I wouldn't think so. So Izzy, what's next for you now? I know you said you're working on this initiative with the YMCA in Montreal. So could you talk about that a bit?
Absolutely. It's really interesting. It's something that came about from the research I did in my master's, and it was a need for more community support after people have had brain injuries, and specifically with exercise. And it kind of made a lot of sense to me to promote exercise at in a place that was so effective for me, that was so positive for me, this large community center in downtown Montreal, very accessible. And I had been speaking about the program for many years to the people at the Y. It was also it was something that, like I said, was related to my research, and it was something that I wanted to implement and help develop in the community. And the YMCA's of Quebec were very interested because it's in line with their approach. It's in line with their values as an organization, and their strategic plan, which is moving more towards older populations and people with disabilities. And it was also very much of interest to the community TBI association in Quebec that I'm working with, and they're called the Association Québécoise des Traumatisés Crâniens. So it's a Quebec association.
AQTC, is it?
Yeah, AQTC.
Okay.
And they organize activities for their members a couple times a month, and they rent locations here and there. And it's something that, and I had worked with them because that was the organization where I recruited my participants for my master's study. And those were the individuals who were telling me there was a need for more support in the community. So it worked out really well. There's interest from the Community TBI Association, and there was interest from the YMCA, YMCA's of Quebec. And we're in the preliminary phases. We're looking to launch the pilot study or the pilot project in January. And we've recruited a number of participants. I think we're looking at the number of about 12 people, 12 people from the association who are going to be participating in a regular exercise program that we're going to run twice a week at the downtown Y. The feedback so far from the people who we've recruited has just been phenomenal. A lot of excitement, a lot of like, wow, this is just incredible. I can't believe that, you're asking me to be part of, so you're offering me a membership for free, and you're asking me to be part of this kind of initiative. So there's a lot of positive feedback from the community association.
So what kind of exercises are they doing?
Well, there's going to be kind of like two components to it. One component is going to be educational. At the very beginning, during the warm-up, I think there's going to be some discussion about the benefits of exercise after brain injury, and that will kind of like be somewhat of the topic for the day. And then after the warm-up, individuals are going to go into, we have an area at the downtown Y called the Techno Gym, and there are a number of machines, and I believe that the individuals are going to be following a full-body program, like a full-body kind of training program, a resistance training program, and using these machines. And we have some really interesting devices that allow the information from the machines to be registered and saved on the computer. So we'll have some information about like the progress and how things are going with each individual as well. And then we'll probably, not probably, but we're looking at doing a cool down period after the general like full body workout session in the Techno Gym, where there's some discussion, a bit of socializing as well, and just like coming back to that educational point of like the incentive for exercising after brain injury, or that particular goal or aspect or point that was brought at the beginning of the session. So the bottom line is it's promoting exercise and fitness after brain injury because of all the benefits that can be reaped for these individuals, with like we're talking about, improvements with their cognition, improvement with their mood, improvement with all aspects of life after brain injury, quality of life and whatnot. And then and there's a social component to it as well, which is bringing together a group of individuals with TBIs who live in the community, who might not necessarily have jobs, and we're bringing them together into a community center where they can be involved with productive activity and positive activity and build relationships with other people like them in this positive setting that will will hopefully all together have a very positive impact. And
Yeah,
I think we hope that certainly hope that it picks up and that it's something that we can promote at a bigger level in other YMCA's across Canada and in other
definitely.
places. And I
Sounds
think
good.
it has a lot of potential for that, you know.
Yeah, it definitely sounds very good. Do you have a name to it? A name of the project? I know it's pilot studies though to do, but is there a tentative name that you'd like to, or that you can or would like to announce for it?
Absolutely. It's called TCC Santé, TBI
T
Health. So
T. So yeah, go ahead.
in French, the TCC is for traumatisme crânio-cérébral. So that would be a TBI, a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
And santé is French for health. So TCC Santé in French,
Okay.
TBI Health, and that's the name of the initiative. It's the TBI Health Initiative, and it's promoting physical activity and exercise in community centers for individuals, for adults who have had brain injury and are no longer part of the rehabilitation program.
Wow, great. So is there like a website or something, a place that people who are interested can check out more information about that, or is that dust still come?
We do not have a website up and running yet, but if
Okay.
anyone's interested to find out more information, by all means, if you want to provide them with my contact information, that is just fine. They can contact me directly. We're looking for partners right now and people who are interested in the project and people who might be interested in applying it elsewhere and whatnot, or supporting it or getting involved at some level. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great initiative. So if anyone has any questions about this, you can please just contact me on Twitter and Facebook or email, and I will find you, give you Enrico's contact info so he can tell you what it's all about. So thank you, Enrico, so much for talking to me today. And your initiative sounds very interesting. And congrats on your Ironman, and hopefully another one to come. Maybe I don't want to put pressure on you, but in a few years, maybe we'll see another
Thank you very much, Nick. I
one.
appreciate it. Thanks for the
No,
call.
thanks.
All right. Take care.
I would like to thank Enrico once again for a great conversation, and all the best to him in future triathlons and with his TCC initiative. Thank you all for listening. Until next time. The music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com.